This wasn't just a policy debate. It was a ticking time bomb. And both women had lit the fuse. The marble halls of the Eisenhower Congressional Center echoed with footsteps that weren't hurried, but weren't calm either. Capitol Hill had seen its share of drama, but today the silence wasn't routine. It was anticipation, the kind that swells just before lightning splits the sky. Outside, the D.C. air was sticky, heavy with July humidity. Inside, the hearing room felt no cooler, not because of the temperature, but because of the people inside it. Rows of staffers fidgeted with notepads, journalists perched on folding chairs like vultures on a wire, a few scattered members of the public, scientists, small tech business owners, AI safety advocates, had slipped in quietly. Their eyes didn't wander. They were here for one reason. They'd heard this hearing would be different. They were right. At 9:03 a.m., the side door opened. Pam Bondi stepped in with her signature calm. Her posture was straight, her expression unreadable. She wore navy, practical, crisp, and carried a thin, tightly clasped binder beneath her arm. No fanfare, no posturing, just quiet intent. A few cameras clicked. She ignored them. Bondi greeted no one, save for a polite nod to the committee clerk. She walked straight to the witness table and sat down, hands folded. Her eyes flicked once toward the other end of the chamber, and then back down to her notes. She wasn't here for spectacle. She was here for clarity. But the storm wasn't far behind her. Across the room, the door opened again, and in walked Congresswoman Layla Monroe, young, bold, with a presence that split conversations in half when she entered a room. Monroe's fire was well known in Washington. Her viral speeches had made her a rising star and a lightning rod. Critics called her reckless. Supporters called her fearless. Monroe called herself unfiltered. Today her jaw was set, her stride sharp. She didn't look toward Bondi, at least not yet. She adjusted her blazer, deep burgundy, and whispered something to her aide. The aide didn't respond. He looked nervous, for good reason. Because today's hearing wasn't just about policy. It was about consequences. She thought it would be just another performance. But Bondi came armed. And she wasn't playing. Committee Chair Edgar Williams brought the room to order with a crisp bang of the gavel. This committee convenes to investigate the rise in violence targeting advanced research institutions in the past 60 days. We will hear from the appointed special prosecutor of cyber and technology-linked crimes, Miss Pamela Bondi. Bondi didn't flinch. She didn't clear her throat. She just began. Let me be clear. We're not here to debate the ethics of artificial intelligence. We're not here to argue about innovation, progress, or fear of the future. We are here because in the last 2 months, 9 AI research centers across 6 states have been firebombed, broken into, vandalized, and in 3 cases had employees physically attacked. One man, an intern in Phoenix, is in a coma, and that, gentlemen and ladies, is not an idea. That's a crime. The room didn't move. Bondi continued. Federal investigators believe these are not isolated incidents. They are coordinated, and we are beginning to understand how. Through rhetoric, through influence, through suggestion. She paused, letting the last word echo. Across from her, Monroe shifted, her lips twitched, but not into a smile. Bondi opened her folder. I want to be very specific because vagueness is how fires start, and vagueness is what allows people to deny what they sparked. From the back of the room, a camera shutter clicked once, then silence again. This committee is aware, Bondi said, that Congresswoman Monroe hosted a live stream last month viewed by over 900,000 people. In it, she said, and I quote, "If they build machines to replace us, we'll show them we're still human, with fire if we have to." There was no noise. Just the tightening of air, like the room had sucked in a collective breath and forgot to let it out. Monroe sat forward now. Her voice was smooth, sharp, and dipped in controlled outrage. "Are you accusing me of orchestrating arson, Miss Bondi?" Bondi replied without a blink. "I'm saying when someone in your position uses language that ambiguous, that provocative, and violence follows, it's not unfair to ask questions. Haragi, when rhetoric becomes a matchstick, who's really holding the flame?" Layla Monroe's tone darkened. "I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I will never apologize for speaking out against unchecked technological tyranny. These companies are playing God with zero accountability. You want to silence that? Be my guest." Her words sliced cleanly. The audience stiffened, but Bondi didn't take the bait. "I'm not here to silence," she said. "I'm here to protect." She pulled out a printed transcript. Her fingers were steady, her eyes direct. "2 days after your live stream, the Envision Lab in Columbus was set on fire. Investigators found flyers with quotes from your speech, slogans painted on walls, 'Still human.' They fear our fire. This isn't fiction. This is federal evidence." Monroe snapped. "So now metaphors are crimes?" "No," Bondi replied calmly. "But to someone already angry, already unstable, they don't always sound like metaphors. They sound like permission." The room stirred. One of Monroe's aides leaned in to whisper, but Monroe waved him off. "I've condemned violence at every turn," she said, "but I won't walk on eggshells to avoid offending billionaires who play puppet master with public policy." Bondi nodded slowly. "And I'm not asking you to. But I am asking you to recognize that in the wrong hands, a speech becomes a spark. And when that spark lands on gasoline, it doesn't matter whether you meant to start the fire. You're still standing there with the match." One video, one line, and suddenly the line between protest and arson got blurry. Bondi flipped to another page. March 9th, Kansas City, an explosion at the Orion Institute. 4 people injured, spray-painted on the wall. They won't replace us with code. She paused. "That phrase, Congresswoman, is from a tweet you posted a week earlier, with a photo of protesters holding signs and your caption, 'Pressure is how diamonds are made and how tyrants crack.'" Monroe stared ahead, not defiant now, just still. Bondi continued. "This isn't about limiting protest. You have the right to march, to shout, to post. But when your words become rallying cries for violence, we don't get to pretend it's harmless." There was no rebuttal yet. Bondi leaned forward slightly, not aggressive, but deliberate. "The question is not whether you lit the fuse. The question is, did you hand someone else the lighter?" For the first time, Monroe hesitated before speaking. Her voice came slower now. "People are scared. They're desperate. And when the system ignores you, you shout louder." Bondi nodded. "Fine. Shout. But remember that some people don't just shout louder. Some people throw bricks. And when they think they're echoing your voice, what then?" The room was silent again. Dense, like gravity, had deepened, and then came the sound no one expected. From the gallery, a chair creaked. A man stood. His eyes were red, his hands clenched into fists, and his voice would change the tone of everything that followed. But that was the next chapter. No one expected the truth to come from the back of the room, but it hit harder than anything said at the table. At first, it was just a shuffle, the soft scrape of a chair, nothing dramatic. But when the man stood, when his voice cracked the silence, it felt like something seismic had shifted. "My name is Noah Jennings," he said, trembling slightly. "My brother Lucas works at the Polaris AI Center in Denver." Or, he did. All eyes turned. Noah stood alone in the back of the chamber, not a politician, not a lawyer, just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. He clutched a folded paper in one hand, a hospital bracelet still wrapped around his wrist. He was locking up last Friday night when they showed up. 3 guys in hoodies. One had a bat. They said he was a traitor for working there, for helping the machine. They broke his arm, smashed his face. He's in a hospital bed right now, wired shut and afraid to speak. No one interrupted, not even Monroe. Noah took a breath. Do I think anyone in this room told them to do that? No. But you want to talk about influence? He looked straight at Monroe. My brother listens to your speeches. He admired your passion. He agreed with your fear. But someone else watched that video and saw a green light. Pam Bondi didn't move. She didn't need to. Her silence was powerful enough to fill the room. Noah's voice broke as he finished. He just wanted to code. He's not the enemy. He's not the villain in this story. But now he can't even look at a screen without flinching. The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. The weight of his words was enough to bend the air. Monroe looked down, and for the first time, her fire flickered. One tweet, one screenshot, one anonymous post, and suddenly it wasn't just talk anymore. After a moment of silence, the chair gave Bondi the floor again. She stood slowly, pulled a new folder from her stack, and opened it with practiced precision. This, she said, holding up a printed image, is from a private group chat accessed by federal investigators. We obtained it with a warrant 3 days ago. She turned it to face the committee. The message was simple. Monroe said it's time to turn up the heat, so let's burn this lie down. Attached to the message was a photo of an AI server room engulfed in flames. Bondi's voice never wavered. The individual who sent this was arrested 2 nights ago in Richmond. Homemade explosives in his car. He had printed Monroe's speech transcript and highlighted phrases like pressure, resistance, and with fire if we have to. Gasps rippled. Even the aides looked rattled. Monroe opened her mouth but said nothing. This is no longer about metaphor, Bondi said. This is about chain reactions. You dropped a match in a room full of dry leaves. Monroe spoke finally, softly. I never meant to cause harm. Bondi didn't smile, didn't nod. That doesn't matter if harm still follows. She came in ready to fight, but the truth has a way of softening even the sharpest tongues. Monroe leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. I've spent my whole life yelling just to be heard, she said. I come from a place where silence equals defeat. So yes, I speak loud. And maybe I speak carelessly. No one interrupted. But hearing that man, hearing Noah, she continued, I get it now. There are people who don't just hear, they act. And sometimes they act wrong. She paused. I didn't throw a brick, but maybe I made someone believe they should. Bondi's face remained unreadable. But the shift had happened. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't an apology. It was something else. Recognition. I'll do better, Monroe said at last. And it didn't sound like politics. It sounded like truth. The room didn't cool down, but something in it shifted. The chairman called for a 10-minute recess. People stood, murmured, shuffled. No one left the room. Bondi remained seated, flipping through her notes with calm precision. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't relaxed. She was preparing. The final blow hadn't landed yet. Across the aisle, Monroe stood slowly, one hand gripping the back of her chair. Her aides approached, whispering urgently. One of them slipped her a phone. She read a message. Her jaw tightened. It was from someone close, someone who told her simply, "He was at that protest. He was arrested. They're saying your video got him there." She blinked hard and placed the phone face down. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The story had moved past ideology, past party lines. Now it was personal. And what Bondi had saved for after the break would make it even more so. Everyone thought the fire had died down, but Bondi wasn't finished, and this last move changed everything. The room had just begun to settle when Bondi reached for a folder unlike the others. It was thin, almost insignificant looking, but the way she lifted it carefully, deliberately, froze the room. She didn't speak right away. She looked at Monroe, then at the chairman, then back to her notes. "This," she said, tapping the folder, contains a sworn affidavit from a federal investigator stationed in Austin, Texas. What's inside confirms a link between political rhetoric and operational planning for the Fort Worth cyber attack. Monroe's lips parted, a flicker of disbelief, or maybe denial. Bondi opened the folder. The affidavit details a series of messages exchanged in a closed encrypted channel, a digital space run by an activist group calling themselves Code Black. They discussed targets, transportation, equipment, and most notably, slogans. One lifted directly from Congresswoman Monroe's live stream. She held up a printed screenshot. "If machines steal our jobs, we steal their silence." Verbatim, Bondi said. She placed the document on the desk with a soft finality that was louder than any shout. These were not fringe actors. They created maps, timelines, a shared drive of imagery. Monroe's face appeared in their recruitment video. Whether she meant to or not, she became their symbol. The silence in the room deepened. Monroe was no longer fiery, no longer poised, just still. "I'm not saying you gave the order," Bondi said, her voice softer now. "I'm saying you were heard by people who needed no more than a spark." It didn't end with shouting or triumph. It ended with something even rarer: understanding. Monroe didn't speak for a long moment. Her fingers toyed with the edge of a paper, then she lifted her head. "I've made a career out of being loud," she said, "but I never stopped to think about the echoes. I thought passion was the weapon. I didn't realize it could also be the fuse." She looked to Noah in the back, then to Bondi. "I still believe in protest. I still believe in pressure. But I believe in accountability, too." She paused. "If someone twisted my message to justify violence, then I failed to draw the line clearly enough. And I'll own that." It wasn't an admission of guilt. It was an acknowledgement of consequence, and in a room where egos usually ruled, it landed harder than 1,000 denials. Bondi nodded, slowly, respectfully. "That's all I was ever asking for." The chairman looked visibly moved. "Let the record reflect that what we've seen here today is rare. Two leaders, opposite ends of the spectrum, meeting somewhere in the middle, not for politics, but for truth." And just like that, the hearing was adjourned. No fireworks, no cheers, just a collective exhale. As Bondi packed her folders, Monroe rose and crossed paths with her at the exit. No words, just a glance, a nod, a mutual understanding that neither of them would ever speak the same way again.